Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to trace the incredible journey of a news story, from like a single fact all the way to the screen you're holding right now. So, let's start with this question. What on earth connects a 400,000-year-old fire to the phone that's probably in your hand right now? I know, it sounds kind of like a riddle, right? But the answer, well, it's all about the hidden process that turns one tiny fact into a massive global headline. And it all starts with this. A really simple but super powerful distinction. See, there's a huge difference between finding a fire that's already burning and actually making one from scratch. That tiny nuance, that's what turns a simple discovery into a real, compelling story. And it's the perfect case study for what we're digging into today. All right, so every story has to start somewhere, right? Let's begin at the very beginning, with that initial spark, that one single powerful fact that has the potential to, light up screens all over the world. Okay, so the story kicks off in a field in Suffolk, England. This is where archaeologists found what they believe is the earliest known man-made fire. I mean, they found the whole setup: a hearth, flint axes that were shattered by heat, and even pyrite, the stone you'd use to create sparks. And the likely fire starters? Well, that would be our ancient cousins, the Neanderthals. And now, just think about that number for a second. 400,000 years. That is a long time. This discovery isn't just about pushing back a date on a timeline. Nope. It places this huge technological leap right at a critical moment in the human story. But here's the thing. A number, even a big one, isn't a story by itself. So, that's the big question, right? How does a raw archaeological fact, like this one, actually turn into a credible, deep-dive news story that you or I would end up reading? Well, it's a really disciplined process of transformation. It all kicks off with the core principles of investigative journalism. And look, this isn't just about reporting what happened. It's really a framework for digging way deeper to figure out why it matters. Yeah, so investigative journalism, it's not really about covering a single isolated event. It's about systematically researching a much bigger issue, all with the goal of uncovering new facts that, actually serve the public interest. See, journalists don't just wander around hoping to stumble upon random facts. They start with a testable theory, a hypothesis. You can think of it as their North Star. It's basically a proposed explanation that connects all the dots. What happened, who was involved, and what was the real impact? Okay, let's jump to the next stage. This is where we see how this classic process gets a really powerful modern upgrade. This is where today's journalists use data to build, to verify, and to really sharpen their story. And that brings us to something called data journalism. These days, creating a killer story often means blending that old-school reporting with data science and statistics. It's all about finding the narrative that's hiding inside the numbers. And this process, it follows a pretty clear workflow. First, you have to find and clean up all that raw data just to make it usable. Then comes the really critical step. You interrogate it. You basically ask the data questions to find patterns. And once you have those patterns, they get visualized and woven into the final story you read. And this is a perfect illustration of that interrogate the data step. For our fire story, journalists compared this new evidence against all the existing data. And they made that crucial distinction between just using a fire, which we know goes back like 1.5 million years, and actually creating one. This new find, this is the earliest evidence of creation. That's a massive cognitive leap. And that, right there, is the real headline. So, okay, the story's been researched, it's been verified, and the real headline is crystal clear. But in the 21st century, that is only half the battle. Now comes the final and honestly, surprisingly complex challenge. How do you get that story delivered to the screen you're looking at right now? I mean, think about it. In today's media world, there isn't just one place for news anymore. You've got websites, dedicated news apps, platforms like Google AMP or whatever. And as the BBC's own team points out, making one single piece of content work perfectly across all of those different environments, well, it's a huge technical puzzle. Yeah, because every single platform behaves differently. On a normal web page, the story has total control. But on something like AMP, it's kind of trapped inside this restricted box. You can almost think of it like a window that won't open all the way, and that limits what it can do. And then inside a news app, it has to speak a totally unique, proprietary language just to do simple stuff like sharing. So the solution is this really clever piece of engineering called a wrapper. The best way to think about it is like a universal translator, or maybe one of those travel adapters. It's what's called an abstraction layer. The story's code just gives it generic command, like, hey, scroll to this point, and the wrapper translates that command into the specific instructions that the website or the AMP page or the app can actually understand. And what you get is this awesome system where developers can build the interactive story just one time, and then they can deploy it absolutely everywhere just by putting it inside the right wrapper for each platform. So you have one for the website, one for AMP, one for the app, and so on. It's a classic write once, deploy anywhere kind of approach. Super efficient. Okay, so let's bring this all home. Let's trace that full, incredible journey of our 400,000-year-old story all the way from a field in Suffolk to the very screen in your hand. So you see, what starts as a literal spark of discovery gets forged into a real narrative through some serious, rigorous investigation. Then it's sharpened by data analysis. And finally, it's delivered to a global audience, all thanks to the complex fire of modern technology.
And this whole process, from fact to hypothesis, from data to code, this is the hidden architecture behind quality journalism. It's the engine that turns one single fact into meaningful knowledge. So the next time you see a headline, what hidden journey are you going to see behind it?